Good afternoon, Quasar Markets Live. Well, we are seeing the rinse and repeat pattern play out that we've seen the last few days. We had a little bit of a run up, then we had the rug taken out from below us, and now we're starting to see a little bit more of a steady climb back up. So as you can see here, I have the SPY S&P index here up. Pre-market hours look like we're going to have some strength. Sold off pretty quickly there, and with CPI data and all that, and now we're starting to see that slow rise back up here. I know Steve has still been saying all day he isn't worried about it. See, QQQ is coming up on that level we talked about yesterday, 458 to 460 as being its key resistance, so something to keep an eye on. I will say you are seeing all three indexes down so far. Dow down also. VIX is rising, but still 19.83 is still low. Gold, which had been up, dropped down after CPI rating. Again, trying to make a move back up. Silver has remained up. It did take a hit again also this morning. Bitcoin took a pretty good size hit this morning, dropped back down here to that 55 and change level, found a little bit of support, and has moved back up into a good range here at about 56,716. Still need to get above that 57,350 level to look bullish on the short term. Crude is going up a little bit here. Brent's up about 1.24 on the day. WTI, which is the Texas index, right around 67.50. Nvidia is climbing back up 111 here, so we are again seeing strength from an Nvidia. Some of the ones we were talking about this morning. Not a whole bunch of strength outside of that, though. See the weakness in retail still showing up through Nordstrom's, PVH, which is Calvin Klein, and others. Kohl's, Foot Locker, Abercrombie, all down for the day. Amazon has turned down here slightly over the last couple of hours too. So after making a nice move up yesterday and in pre-market, we've seen a little bit of a slippage from Amazon here. Oracle about even now, so it's been holding up. The liquor company is all sort of down today, about 1.5 point and quarter. Brown-Forman, Constellation Brands, Duckhorn, and Molson all down. So let's take a look what else is moving today. Those are the big ones. What else that we were watching? Banks, JP Morgan. Again, I told you I really like that 200 level. We'll be looking to see if it retraces that far to get back in here. Ally still dropping too. It had been close to the bottoms of the day. The big winner is definitely Petco. Look at this sucker running. I pointed this out yesterday. I like this stock. I definitely do it there. I did not make a play on it personally. Wish I did, of course, but had talked up this morning. Now up almost 31%. And we're seeing it move way up after we're seeing multiple different brokerages give it an outperform. RBC Capital, Wells Fargo, so a few of them going up there. Okay, well, we are going to, this leads into our talk yesterday with Charlie Moon from Prosper Trading. So we are going to pull up his video here.
Good afternoon, Quasar Markets Live. I am your host, Howard Greenberg, Hondo from Quasar Markets Live, here with the man himself, the legend, the disciple of trend, Charlie Moon from Prosper Trading Academy. Charlie, how you doing today?
Doing good, brother. How are you?
I'm good, man. It's been an interesting couple of days in the market. This week's been a little bit more fun than last week. I don't like that doom and gloom weeks.
Yeah, pullback was pretty significant last week, and the bounce has been pretty lethargic. So it's interesting to see how flaccid things are going into the CPI report this week. And, it doesn't seem like anything's getting teed up for the big old FOMC announcement towards the end of this month. What's crazy, Howard, is that with the jobs data that came out last week, the market started pricing in the possibility of a 50 basis point rate cut. And it sounds funny to say this because everybody's been so excited for these rate cuts, but I almost think that if the Fed decides to cut 50 versus 25, it's actually going to cause the markets to panic. And it's because it's almost a signal like they're fearful of a recession.
They're saying they made a mistake. Yeah, you nailed it.
Yeah,
so a couple of things that we were talking about this morning here in Quasar Live was I read an analyst, Callie Cox from Richwalt Wealth Management. She's calling it the great wait right now. A lot of money on the sidelines. You're seeing it. There's a lot of money on the sidelines. You're hearing it. And then everybody's sort of in a wait and see, in my opinion, because you look at economic data and what I think might be positive, you might think is negative. And we're seeing that in the tipsy-topsy way the markets are playing out after any kind of reference point. But I also think it's easy to do because I pointed out, you look at the labor report. So no job creation, man, labor's bad. Well, wait a second. We also have our lowest, level of layoffs and everything else since 2020. So what it is people aren't spending money on maybe new hiring of new adding to there, but they're also not decreasing headcount. So there's been both sides of the boat on there too, I think, which is confusing people a little bit more. And then lastly, the other thing I saw is that it's both sides. Institutionals holding money. Berkshire's got more money than ever before, and it's the average investor. So you don't usually see that, correlation.
Yeah, the Berkshire thing is really interesting, right? They got somewhere around $300 billion in cash just sitting there waiting to be used. They're constantly and very quickly dumping BAC, and that's also another signal to the markets, I guess, that Buff is a little bit worried about, exposure into the financials. And, he's pretty heavy, or he's been building a pretty heavy position into the long-term bonds, TLT in particular, and TLT is moving. And, the signal for the markets is historically when we see yields dropping fast because the demand is really starting to get heavy or thick for the longer term dated bonds, and the market is working lower, it's never a good signal. It's usually a precursor of what's to come, and it's always historically been ugly. And a lot of the times these have been signals prior to when recessions hit. And so I don't know if that's what the market is giving away right now, but TLT has made new 52-week highs. They've been in a state of recovery. And, obviously equities have been extremely shaky. Like you said, there's some confusion. People are not sure. Any money that's coming in is getting pulled out of the markets very quickly. So people are very short term in their thesis and holding time. And I believe it's just going to keep being like this until the FOMC. And then we're going to have a lot more clarity. And then from there, we're going to know exactly what the markets want to do. So, hate to say it, but the stock market is getting more volatile than Bitcoin. What's going on, man?
I don't know about that, but the volatility, I'd say it's getting more choppy for sure. What you are seeing is, you see that difference. And I was going to ask you how it's affecting how you guys are doing your trading over at Prosper. I mean, the first hour is insane. The first hour, you got to buy pre-market because that first half hour, everything skyrockets, especially tech lately. You look at NVIDIA, Tesla, these things, they're going up 7-8% before all of a sudden the pullback.
Yeah, no, this is what's been tough. So I was just kind of breaking it down. I took a position pretty late in the day yesterday in Tesla and Amazon, hit my targets right at the open. Great reward, great return. Pinpointed two stocks that I had my eyes on that were at pivot points. They looked really strong at the open. bought them on pullbacks, and all they've done is kept pulling back so far. So, it's kind of that, what looks good, all of a sudden, flips over, and all of a sudden you're just like, I've made a grave mistake. And this is the rough part about the markets, is that there's a lot more false signals being kind of showcased. And, where the market conditions are really good, whether it's, strongly up or strongly down, usually there's a lot of consistency with how we're viewing opportunities from a technical base. Behavioral is pretty much the same. What we're seeing, this Jekyll and Hyde type of markets at the open. We saw it yesterday. The SPY, Howard, if I could get my chart, if I could get the projection really quick. The SPY and the NASDAQ yesterday.
One second, Charlie. I moved my page when I shouldn't have. There we go.
No worries. I'm trying to make things difficult for you.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, look at the depth of pricing movement.
Right.
Yeah, this is yesterday. This is on a 3-minute time frame, and I mean, this was just.
Yeah, like you said, it's crypto. That is crypto. That used to be what you'd see forced by the leverage. Well, I think what we've got to break down for people is what you had in crypto. We now have these options. Are people are zero DTA in options, which is just leveraging it. That's what they're using it as. That's not what it's meant to be, and that's not what it is. But they're using that instrument. If you talk to the average trader, that's what they're going to tell you, right? The retail trader, they can't explain the gamma, the delta, the theta. All they know is it's an amplified move on the move of a stock. And,
exactly.
That's part of a problem with the education. That's why what we both do here at Quasar Markets and with you guys at Prosper is try to educate people that. Good thing that I would point out too, like that I know happened today without even asking you, is you guys, when you made profits this morning, you guys locked them in, and then you had stop losses in place to make sure that you were raising it throughout the morning to make sure you locked in profits on Amazon and on Tesla. That's what you got to do in this type of market. If you're not playing it that way, then you're jumping in front of a steamroller to pick up a nickel that's about to get run over.
And again, like, look at how. If you look at my chart, look at how we ended up breaking. We waterfall down, and then now we've pretty much recovered everything from the point of the drop. And that's the thing, like, the market is just changing its mind on a dime. And there's, just when you think there's going to be follow through, there's a pivot. And then when you buy into that pivot, it may shake you out and work a little bit lower and then bounce for the real rally. Or you're just not sure if the real rally is there, and then you start taking profits too early, and then it rises up. And so it's a really difficult market environment to trade in. This is, for me, it's for those that are just very comfortable with risk, because this is there's opportunity for reward, but it's just constant risk that we're going to be facing. When we're in a really healthy market, the risk valuation is minimalized, because the likelihood, the percentage wise of continuance of strength of demand, people could get sloppy and still be bailed out and make great money. Right. There's no room for error. There's very little market
during these markets. For me, back in the Prosper days, this is where I would tighten up my stop losses. I'd be looking to make tighter trades. Not I'd like to hit a lot more singles and doubles. Not looking for those home runs as much. And stay disciplined, stay true to what your thesis is on the trade, and you'll be okay. That's definitely a great learning point that you put right there for people. That they don't have a tendency to do. And what I've seen also is volume's not there. It looks like it's there from 9 to 10. You see this. You do see volume that first hour, but then volume is really sapping up. Again, I'm not seeing a huge liquidity. You pointed out to me a couple of pumpers this morning that you said you had to watch for volume, and sure enough, I know on Lace, once it hit volume, jumped through that 850 mark and jumped up from there. I think it got to like almost close to 9. You had pointed that one out to me earlier today, and it really moved, but it took that volume. Like, I was watching it, and when I could see that it got an hour with about $1 million in volume, boom, there was finally enough to get it to move in one direction. I think, like you said, there's a lot of false, you get a lot of false readings right now, because things turn quickly. but they only turn for a short time. Again, it looks like the crypto market where it used to be the leverage getting pulled out of the market. Here, I think it's those, weak-handed traders that aren't ready for this volatility.
Yeah, this is the Qs are starting to turn it up. Like since we've been on, the Qs have gone only up.
Yeah, I mean it makes it just random times, random spots. Yeah, look at that chart. It's just crazy.
Well, this is TRVN I have on my chart, Howard.
Yeah.
This is one to keep an eye on if it pops that I think it's a 760 level. This one doesn't have the volume build yet, so it's been grinding up, but the float on this is only, I think, 850,000. So if it starts pumping on volume, there's going to be no borrows. People can't short. This is one of those runaway freight train type of plays that you want to be on the lookout. I think SMX is another one as well.
Absolutely, I saw that on SMX.
SMX is actually a pivot. Yeah, this one melted down. Who the hell got shorts on this? Yeah, and again, last time I was on, we talked about how the depth of these micros are starting to come to life. We're seeing it more and more, and I swear to you, it's almost as if people are starting to rather trade these than some of the bigger tech names because they're getting more follow through, whether it's up or down, in these plays versus kind of the false alert, false flagging. Look at NVIDIA earlier, like. After that initial pop, it led to a straight drop. And then just look at how it traded. This is NVIDIA, ladies and gentlemen.
Right. It's not a meme coin. That's what's crazy about it.
It doesn't that look like it's like a low liquidity chop? And, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of shares being traded. It's non-directional, non-conviction type of movement. And that's the worst market conditions for any trader, even those that are looking for range-bound type trades, to really effectively be caught in. I mean, it's like jumping into a laundry machine and turning on that spin cycle. You're just going to get tossed around back and forth there.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that's what it is. And what happens is this is where the time, and I'm seeing it in the chats that I'm in, the groups that I'm in, you're getting a lot of disillusioned traders right now. A lot of people just getting washed out every day. Trying to convince them that sitting on your hands is sometimes the best thing to do has been tough too. That's one of the things that, again, a takeaway I had from the Prosper crew was definitely that sometimes no trade is the trade. There. I will tell you, the ones that'll start to look, for me, a little appetizing, JP Morgan dropping down tremendously today after, downgrades by Ally and a couple of others. JP Morgan, let's face it, when it comes to the banking financial institutions, it's the best of class. If you had bought it, when was it? It dropped again back. Oh man, I got to remember this for a second. It had a big drop in when Silicon Valley hit last March, I want to say.
Oh yeah, they've had a few.
And what happens is they just recover. If you don't think JP Morgan's going to recover, it just does. So,
you ain't lying.
Well, it has to. I mean, it's without it's the benchmark for all financial institutions. It created the Federal Reserve for all intents and purposes, and it's who the Fed still goes to bail out every bank. Right? We just said that when Silicon Valley Bank and all those banks went under. Who bailed them out? Who got the assets? JP Morgan. So these are the days that I look at stuff like that. I know your boss. Mr. Bauer there is usually big at buying these bounce backs on those stocks like that, especially ones that he knows in that financial area that he came from. But to me, this is one. Now, I'm not saying today this is 202 is the low. I'm just saying that the same way I look at Bitcoin after a day where it has a 12% drop. You're not going to remember that if you bought it at 202 or 198 when you sell it at 240. So
that.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Sometimes don't be so worried if your thesis, if you've got the feeling that I do, that JP Morgan when it comes to financial institutions is the class, then today on a drop of 6.64%, and they didn't give any bad news. I mean, Jamie Dimon always is pessimistic. When's the last time the guy's never, outside of when when you know the S is about to hit the fan, is when Jamie Dimon starts talking good, because he in general talks down the market. That's what his job. I heard an announcer today talk about it. What he's always done is he's had that philosophy forever, to underpromise and overdeliver, and J.P. Morgan does it. You look at earning report after earnings report, they always overdeliver. It's just beat after beat after beat, and but he, those are the ones I'm looking at. Like you said, tech, the bounce back in tech. We haven't had the huge bounce back. We've seen some of them come back, but what was Nvidia trading at just recently?
The highs of Nvidia,
140-ish, I want to say, right?
Yeah,
we're now
pretty
at 106.
We were just recently at 130. They couldn't break through that level, but they had a double top at 140 at their all-time high levels.
Right.
But they've held up relatively well. I mean, a lot of their peers have actually fallen below the 200-day, and they've been able to maintain. And kind of dating back to that J.P. Morgan, comment. You're right. Jamie Dimon's been talking about, inflation and recession as being such a negative. And he's been kind of like, this market, I wouldn't trust it, blah, blah, blah. And here we are constantly pushing. We're only a few percentages off the highs, all-time highs in the SPY. Obviously we're a little bit further down than where we were in the Qs. The Qs were so ahead of themselves. It's not surprising they have a deeper pullback, but when you're talking about him being pessimistic, he was very pessimistic, right, and the market has done well. So maybe he is the leading indicator. If he starts getting
again, but we just saw something. He doesn't make many mistakes.
No.
Buffett doesn't make many mistakes, right? Where are their money right now? What are they saying? What are those guys saying? That's. Sometimes we don't like to listen to those folks because they're not as, it's not as exciting as listening to, Mike Novogratz or, a Kramer say, this, yelling and screaming. But sometimes the quiet guy in the back of the room is the guy that actually knows what's going on.
Yeah. It's funny, too, with Warren Buffett. He's been very aggressively dumping the Bank of America. The biggest surprise for me was how much of his Apple position he shed. He went from being the largest shareholder to dropping out of the top 5, maybe even top 10. But he's still holding half. However, shedding half was pretty dramatic. He's sitting on an ungodly pile of cash and just kind of in a wait and see mode. He himself doesn't trust not only what he's seeing in the markets, but certainly from an economic standpoint. And really, since that 13F filing, the markets have been just really shaky since then.
Well,
and
Yeah, I think it did. I think he speaks to both the institutional investor and to the retail investor, and they do tend to listen. What's been interesting to me, too, is a lot of his plays in the last few years have really been overseas. One of his big moves was down in Brazil with the banks down there. In fact, the biggest digital asset bank down there. And then Japan, his biggest wins in the last 5 years, quite frankly, have been the 5 largest trading houses in Japan, which are basically the equivalent in the U.S. of private equity. They're not trading houses like you would think Charles Schwab or, TD or something like that. They are basically your equivalent of an Apollo, Global Management or BlackRock, where they are private.
He's also made moves in China with BYD. The EV company.
Yeah.
So
and we saw the news today. One of the things pushing Tesla, in my opinion, today was the news, and I didn't put 2 and 2 together until I actually read it today. They're lowering the tariffs in Europe for the Chinese EVs, and that helps Tesla because that's where they support that market. I would, in my mind, Tesla's made in California or Texas, and then we ship it over wherever. No, actually, the ones for Europe were coming out of China, so that would help them.
China and Berlin.
Yeah,
Buff is very well positioned in emerging markets. He's very well positioned. His concern isn't really macro for the global economy. It's certainly more micro in the near term for the U.S. economy. And he sees there's a lot of relative value out there. He's in no rush to pile it in. There's no real true long-term value in the tech names because of such an overinflation on pricing and valuation.
Yeah. Valuation. When you're trading
SMCI is
21 times earnings, it's not in. That's
well,
not,
look at
that doesn't
SMCI.
focus. Yeah.
Yeah, SMCI, since being included in the S&P 500, is down what, almost $700 per share, $600 per share.
Yeah.
So the inclusion thing, it's an inch, and we were just talking about that as well with coin. But the inclusion thing doesn't necessarily mean that a stock's going to perform well. Palantir yesterday was off and running, but a little different today. Dell, they've recovered. They were down to 100. Now they're back to 107. So they've gotten that boost. But, they made that move on Friday after the close, after the inclusion announcement. So they've effectively done nothing. They've just kind of gone back and forth.
Well, and that's, to me, that's like what I used to call the Coinbase bump, right? You would see that in the coins. But what happened is, as the market got bigger, and that's what's happened in the world of stocks now, and the same way, that bump doesn't mean as much. Because, like you said, people don't look at it the same way. Well, it matters because of the weightings and the way that the funds have to buy into it. It's not the same for the retail trader. If it's not a darling to the retail trader, it doesn't just become a darling. So what happens is you see that, and you get the chaser. Again, that there's a lot of liquid equity, that you got to look for there. They'll have trouble. Like Dell will have trouble rising back up, in my opinion. Because it wasn't rising up. Whereas Palantir, in my opinion, Palantir is one of those ones that's funny because people don't realize what they do and how important they are. They basically do all the software and cybersecurity and cloud for the government, like all of it.
They have so many different government contracts.
Yeah, it's crazy, but it's not a sexy name because that's all they do. They don't have a product that you go and buy at the Apple Store. There's nothing you're downloading that has their name on it, so it's not that sexy. But yeah, so I think that has a little bit more legs in the S&P helped give it a bump. But what I think there happened is it opened some investors' eyes that didn't realize what Palantir was. Now that they're in there, they'll do a little bit more research. So I do think that effect could work for them. I think the opposite for Dell. I think people will look at it and go, Dell? Come on, look what it's done for the last 10 years. It hasn't been exciting. Why is it exciting today? And you'll see that result. So it'll be interesting. The other inclusion there was Erie, which is my car insurance. They're a great company, but that's not sexy at all. Those are the companies that Buffett ends up buying, though, that make him all the money. He's big on the non-sexy brands, because it's all about fundamentals to him. He'd rather buy, like I said, J.P. Morgan at a 7x earnings ratio right now on an EPS versus Nvidia at 21. He just
I was going to say you could tell when it's Buffett making the investment versus his two sons making the investment.
Without a doubt,
because his two sons love tech.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and for good reason. It is what drives the market. I mean, you saw it today with Nvidia, what it did this morning. It took everything up with it, and then when it turned, it brought everything with it.
Buffett's history with the Magnificent Seven has been good in recent years. I mean, they nailed Netflix for like 80 to 100 points. They grabbed Amazon on the lows and Apple on the lows. They still hold their Amazon position wasn't that big. And Buff's he's talked about it before, his regret never buying into Amazon. He wasn't going to miss out on that second opportunity when there was that pretty deep pullback. And so, he, I think, just started shedding a little bit of the Amazon, which was overshadowed because the substantial cut in the Apple holdings. But, you're seeing that his portfolio is getting a lot more diversified into tech. Yep. Where it had very little exposure outside of names like IBM, for example, who, by the way, is
he was right. Yeah, IBM, Intel's, some of the old standbys are making a little bit of a move on the tech side, which is kind of funny. My other thing will be interesting to watch if he starts to buy anything else in China. Because, again, over the years, he's had a big hand in Alibaba. He's had a big hand in Baidu, at different times. And he seems to have a really good handle on that market. So if he starts to nibble away there, that always is, would be interesting to me to see.
It would be PDD. That's where I could see him buying some value.
Yeah.
PDD.
Yeah. Well, been beat down, Temu. We've been watching that on.
Timu's crazy.
What's that?
Timu is crazy, and I mean, honestly, it's like gangbusters right now, especially with the younger gen. And that's where like I could see the longer term value in PDD, but you know, like I said, out of all the Chinese stocks, if I was to say any one of those would be a dip buy opportunity, it'd probably be PDD for Buffett.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. It will be interesting. Like I said, whatever you think he's going to buy, it probably isn't going to be it. He'll end up buying like Smucker's jam, because again, like a non-sexy food, he's
Cracker
big into
Barrel.
non-sexy food, non-sexy consumer durables. Those are the things that he kind of makes his moves in over the year. Trying to see what's going on here in the market.
The markets are trying to bounce, but they're getting stuck here, and that's the problem.
Bitcoin back above 57 here. 57,196. So that's holding up pretty well for us.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is a lunchtime bump, and this has kind of been the threshold on the Qs based on the trend line that we're seeing. So, it's pretty effective. This is being highly watched. If they can't break through this level, we're probably reversing back, at least to the closing price, and perhaps back down to the lows. It's good to see the markets trying to stay positive. We'll see if they can actually do it.
Can hold on.
The S&P just crossed over positive right now, but the VIX has been struggling to get above 20 and sustain that hold, Howard. So,
Yeah, I've been telling people the 20 is the new 0 to me. 20 sort of been like that even mark. Steve was explaining that to me, and Scott was on an interview last week, explaining that, in general, that 20 spot being a good area to look at is sort of your 0. And I think, again, it just shows people sitting on their hands. You look at fear and greed factors and things like that, we're about as firmly in the middle of no man's land as you can be. There's just no real direction. I'll tell you one that's tanking still, oil. Down 4% here, 66.50 today.
New 52-week lows for sure. I was looking at XOP. Last time XOP was at this price range with the indicators shaped up, they led to a pretty nice bounce. I use a tool called Trade Machine, AI-based tool, and they're on their kind of oversold list. So I was very attracted to XOP. And again, I don't have my understudy indicators being shown, but this is kind of that inclusion range. And if we look back, Howard, at crude futures, right, the spot price of crude here being at these 52-week lows, I'm going to bring it to a weekly chart here so you can take a quick look. But this has been a pretty significant level of demand over the last 2 years in this range.
Yeah,
and this was their 3-year low right here. So, short-term consolidation breakout, but certainly could be a little bit of a lift. OPEC Plus had already talked about, delaying any rampant production. So,
yeah,
they're trying.
We also know the SPR's got to get restocked. It hasn't. We haven't heard any news of that. A lot of rumblings in the political world that's being very politically motivated, not filling the SPR so that we're hitting low gas prices right now. For me, I don't play the political game, just what's in front of me though. But that's the SPR is low. This is when we normally buy it. Under that 68 level is where Biden's made it clear he wants to be. So that's what Steve and I were talking about today. It's one to definitely keep an eye on. Here I just wonder about the political. Like I said, the political aspect of that right now is a little tough. Matters what happens in Libya. Also, it looks like those factions are sort of getting, the UN's there right now trying to get that settled down and hopefully get some oil out of there for their sakes. They need the money.
We can get some guidance tonight from the debate.
Yeah, debate's going to be interesting. What's DJT doing right now? It was up pretty much earlier.
Yeah, it was pumping earlier.
Where do I have that on this one? Up
Even
3.94%. Yeah. Yeah, that's not a pretty looking chart though. No matter how you look at that. The only thing that I can give you as there is the fact that in between about 15 and 18 has been historical bottom of the earth for it. you know.
We'll see. That's a lot of people tie it directly, obviously, to what Trump is doing, whether he, supposedly has the lead or doesn't have the lead, and et cetera. But outside of that, in terms of his company, it's not really doing that great. So
yeah, it's earnings and stuff. No one cares though. That's the unfortunate truth to this one. Is it's like when I used to yell and scream as to why people are buying Doge. It has no practical use. This company has no real practical use, quite honestly, to be where it's valued, and it just pumps, like you said, almost on his popularity and where we stand.
Yeah, I actually know a smaller hedge fund manager out of Oak Brook, Illinois, who is a Trump fanatic, and his cost basis price, he's so underwater on this position.
Sure.
And just you could just and this is where like the psychology effect comes into play in a role, because this is a guy who's a fund manager,
right, knows what he's doing.
Yeah, his core values is based on looking at fundamental values and opportunity. Has this position, I'm sure it's not substantial in his portfolio, but I mean, he's been buying it up since it's in the hundreds after that one-day pump. And he's kind of just in this position where he hasn't really added on too much, so his cost basis pricing is like so high, it's like almost guaranteed to remain underwater unless he starts really piling in on these lows.
He'd have to say, I'm going to cost basis that sucker down tremendously at about
you got to go
4 to 5-1 ratio.
Yeah,
to move
and
it that
even
way.
then you're praying for like a ungodly percentage rally,
right? And
just
right. Those are the ones that sometimes people, Charlie, that's a great point, and sometimes people don't understand. When you're that far underwater, you can't make it back on that stock. Like, you're better off taking your loss and then whatever money you have left, starting afresh in a new stock, because you're so underwater, and you're going to be selling into your own pressure. You're going to be, you know what I mean? You're going to be the sell pressure. You need to be the exit liquidity. You're the exit liquidity and you're the sell pressure. So
it's the same thing.
That's a no-win. But you would see that in the meme coins. You'd get someone that bought, one of those ones, Pepe 6,000 or something. The 17th iteration of Shiba, and they're convincing themselves that cost averaging down, and you're like, you don't get it. Like yeah, on that one. So if you cost average down from, let's say you're in at 75. And now you get it to 45. Well, what are the chances? It's got to go 4x to get to 45.
Yeah, like those that bought it to save food.
Yeah, well, it's again, I saw it over the years in ones that actually did make it back, like Ripple and Cardano from the great 2017 first bull run of crypto, that they made it back in the second run. But I can tell you what it was like on the market trying to make any money, because you have the sell pressure just immense. Every time it goes up, you've got somebody that's like, okay, it's close enough now, I'm out. You can't get them. Once that water is on that ship, it's tough to bail it out. So
yeah, no, and it's the same thing with the micro caps, right? So WHLR in recent days, but I could give you thousands of names. Like, for example, CEI is another one, Indo is another one, right?
Yeah.
These names, like most recently, SIGA and GOVX, which pumped on the monkeypox news, and Lunar at one point I believe was over $30. Now it's trading at $4 or $5. Even like companies that are well known, like Nikola, for example, right? The hydrogen powered company that was basically a fraud. I mean, that thing went over $80, and I mean, at one point I believe got under $1.
It did go under. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's the problem, is that there's bag holders at so many tiers above that every time it pops, these pops lead to huge selling suppression, because people are just dumping. They're just trying to recover what they can, and to get from underneath it, they just dump it on every pump. Yeah. And so it's really hard for these stocks that have had recent pops, and they drop heavy and then they pop again, from a lower price point, they just continue to see this wave of selling, and it's just damn near impossible for a recovery. Just like DJT, it's not a micro cap name, but it's the same thesis, it's the same psychology that surrounds that stock, and it's just such a nasty cloud, to like prevent this stock from ever going anywhere, even if it does start to turn the corner fundamentally.
Right. Well, you never recover. Look at GME. GME's actually made like 17
Yes.
great business decisions over the last, 2 years. But its stock is at the whims of the WSB group, and it's going to be because so many of them still own it at such ridiculous valuations, that they're just underwater, and even if you just look at the 52-week, never mind if you get back into the all times, it's still $64. It's trading at 24 right now.
Check this out, Howard. There's a Twitter account. I'm not going to give them the notoriety, but it was run by a young lady who, during this madness, was pumping AMC, talking about how she was putting her life savings in. She bought more, kept on buying as it kept going down. And it went from being a AMC shill account to saying that, oh, the stock market system is rigged, and now she's some like hardcore right wing account. that's like kind of on the.
Well, I mean, and that's what's difficult, Charlie. Is there's a couple of things that I always worry about, and worry more in the crypto side, but I worry more on the retail regular stock trader now. Is that they're coming in with little to no education into what they're doing. They're they're not buying, again, trade Nvidia. You can buy 1/100th of a share if you want on, Robinhood. But buy the good stocks that aren't being manipulated by these small pump and dumps and aren't being, as crazy to that part. Now they still have volatility, don't get me wrong, but they're not at the whims. There's actual reasons to why they go up or down.
Right.
You look at these wheelers. You look at APLD is another one we've been watching, you and I, SMMT, INBS, SINT. If you're playing that game, don't get me wrong, I have more fun than anybody. You and I were on the phone this morning, throwing names back and forth at each other because today was a micro pumper day. Or I should say it was a try day. Everything tried. Yeah. Nothing seemed to break out, right? But we had like 4 or 5 of them that were on watch. LASE, Faraday was back on watch for me at one point. BKYI made its move. QH made its move and then made another move. I don't know if you were watching that one today.
Oh, yeah. They were on the gainers list at, 56 cents. Now, they just broke $1. If they could hold that $1, that's important. So for those that don't know with micro cap names, especially if they've been underwater for $1, most of these or all these stocks that we reference, they're NASDAQ listed stocks. They're not OTCs. So the basis of being on the NASDAQ is that if you are under a $1 bid for under 180 trading days, you get a delisting notice from the NASDAQ. So a lot of these sub $1 stocks will all of a sudden have all this fundamental above $1. And so a lot of the times, there's traders that trade around this $1 price. There's short sellers that come in, and effectively that $1 becomes a major barrier for stocks to get above.
Exactly.
But when it gets above and holds, it actually could lead to a very short-term short squeeze. And 30% sounds like a lot, but that's a 30-cent jump from $1. But you could easily time these smaller moves, and because it's $1, you get the leverage. So, for those that are looking at QH right now, it just popped that $1 mark, but failed to sustain. If they get trapped here, the buyers are in panic mode.
Yeah, and the other thing I would point out, Charlie, is it's not just that the news releases go there. Is what you get is big bag holders, they have a reason to put more money in. Because if it gets delisted, they pretty much lose everything. So,
right.
So the idea is I got $1,000 in there. Let's just pick an easy number. I might put another 500 in because otherwise I'm losing that full 1,000 if it gets delisted, because it takes forever for them to get back into the listings. Most don't ever make it. I forget the one I was looking at today. There was one today that actually just got relisted. That jumped on that news, like you said, that closed over the $1 enough to get itself back. They satisfied the NASDAQ's requirements. You
Just
know,
resets the clock.
yeah, yeah,
Just buy more time, man. Buy more
yeah.
time, make an offering, survive to live and find another day.
Charlie, pull up that LASE we were talking about because I think this is the one that's a good one to show people too what you're sort of looking at there because it isn't all pump and dump, pump and dump. This one's had legs here for a little bit on the hourly chart. It's moved up pretty decently, and it's stalled out and looking for its next wave. What you can see though is when you look at the volumes is if there's no volume, there's no movement. And it goes
Right.
no volume, and you gotta be. It's sort of like the Shiba or the Doge. You gotta like right now is where you gotta be taking your chance. Put a pretty short stop loss on it, but in this 850 range is sort of it's gonna make its move or not.
Yeah, so I was looking at this from a 3-year time frame, and this is what drew my interest right here, Howard, because that was that peak, valuation level, and that's exactly where it stopped here,
Yep.
right? And since we broke, it's been strong. Now you should know what this is. It's just a little different shading, but that's your LRC right now on the weekly. And so they pop and break. This LRC is probably going to start flipping. And this now means that the scope and scale is probably working towards 10, 11. And again, it's the same thing. Once we start breaking through these thresholds, like, for example, there's this weird psychology about stocks being single digits versus double digits. So, $9.99 isn't attractive or nearly as attractive to an individual such as $10. There's only a penny difference between the price. But you ask 100 people, almost all of them can be like, oh, the $10 mark is just more attractive to me. And so once we clear those levels and we get into uncharted territory like we would be here, the cardinal rule of thumb is to look in the range between $2 to $2.50 as your resistance point. So that means 12 to 12.50, 14 to 15, 17 to 17.5, and then 20, 20 and just keep on going until it just can't, go up anymore. And so that's where we're kind of at. We're bumping, we're trying to make the moves. We're stuck at the LRC, which generally means that we're looking for a pivot reversal down on the weekly chart. The daily chart remains very, very strong. I mean, this is as good as it gets. But same thing, it coincides right with that LRC as well. And then when we look at it now in a shorter time frame on the 3-minute chart, shocker, they defined that ceiling early this morning.
Absolutely.
They just tested it. They tested it twice here in the last hour. And while they're not rolling over, the demand is still propping the stock up. Sellers are definitely making their stand here. So they break, then it's 10. They're going to put their stand down again at 10. They get above 10, it should be a fast run to 12, 12.5.
The other thing I'd point out is looking at your volume at the bottom of the screen. Those pump ups to test it didn't take much volume. You know what I mean? Is if we can see a volume spike like you saw earlier in the day, that's going to pump you right through it. So that's what you and I would be looking at for that volume. Once that volume comes, I'm following. I got to see the volume first, break through it, but on the continuation, those are the plays. That's what this is if it follows that pattern. That was one that definitely caught my eye as having an opportunity to actually break away. I'd say the other side of that would be BKYI, which looks like it's going to turn over here, and more like what we've seen with the the pump and dumpers in general.
If for me, if LASC starts trading in volume at this box somewhere in the range that it previously did or higher, that's when you're going to see the real pump. But if it remains in this lower tier, where this lower threshold is, where it's been pretty much actively trading, for the vast majority of the day, there's no chance.
Right.
BKYI, let me pull that up here. BKYI, I believe, has folded since they had a pretty sharp halt up. So they're getting a good volume build right now. So they're bouncing. It looks like that they're bouncing from the intraday low, and it coincides from here. So it could spark up above 220. You're seeing that kind of transition and change in trend. Yeah, we're seeing that breakdown here. So it's looking a little bit more bullish, but this is the same thing, Howard. People that got caught buying here, 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 and here.
Absolutely.
That's who I'm worried about dumping. When
I'm even more worried to the left of you, just before, right there. Well, yeah, right up there. Those folks above you in that second, right there. Yeah, that second arrow, they're going to hit you hard on any kind of start, because they held. Again, if I was trading that during today, okay, I took my bump and went down. I got a higher high. I didn't get a lower low, so I'm still in this trade. Maybe if someone's following that simple, lower highs, lower lows, higher lows, and following that pattern, they're going to keep in it. But like you said, if they don't break through that there, it's going to dump. It definitely is.
Good call on that, Howard, because look, at that high, look at how many times we just referenced on the way down, and that was used as a suppression point, because look at the follow through every time when we're at that price. So look at you, the man, the myth, the legend.
I can still read a chart, my friend, But that's exactly what you're looking at. I mean, I'm telling you, I'm loving watching these every day, every morning now, because what I was worried about is I didn't know how repeatable they were, but they seem to have a life to them, where you get that first pump and second pumps and third. So you got about 3 plays in a lot of them, so that's, you can find them that way. I will tell you that I'm sure you're just using a simple screener to do it. It doesn't take much. You're just looking a simple U.S. market mover, even from your friends at Market Watch or CNBC will help you guide through that one. It's not that hard. Just look for the gainers, watch what they do on that first pump, and then again look at watch volume, because money follows the volume. Price follows volume always.
Yeah, FinViz is another good resource. StockTwits is another good resource. Thinkorswim has what's known as a sizzle list. You can always pull that up as well.
Nice.
And Howard says it, if you just run a scan for highest percentage gain at pre-market, you could easily find these as well. Just,
because it gives you, what it is, it's going to start to teach you the patterns that you're looking for the next one. And that's what I've already noticed just by watching these, since you mentioned them to me 2 weeks ago. You're starting to see the patterns on the ones that are going to break, and you're seeing some decent, like you said, when you break it down, you're seeing ones that have movement that are, showing you the proper indicators on both weekly, daily, and short-term charts on some of them. So they have moves.
This market is really trying to get stupid, Howard.
It is trying to move here. Everything's trying to move up. We're getting towards, 456. I've put up on SPY. 550 is still my spot to watch today. If we can get above 550, that's when we'll get a run, in my opinion.
SPY rejected at the 50 SMA on the daily chart today. So we make new highs. We could. I don't know.
The market wants it. If it can do it, like I said, I had 550. If it breaks 550, I think we run. Until it does that, I think we stay in this sort of range bound, waiting for FOMC. The one QQQ is the one that looks ready to break through too. I had that at this 455, 460 area, saying if it gets through 460, watch out there for a move back to.
I'm rooting for you to be right, sir.
Yeah, I mean, there's, it's there. What we've seen is, a little bit of range where there's some predictable pivot points right now, that have played out over the last 2 weeks pretty hard. We traded on the QQQ, from the 3rd to the 6th, pretty much in that range, in between 455 and 465. That's what we're trying to build back up to, That's what we're looking at.
We're seriously trying to pop. We may see new highs in the Qs.
Yeah.
We just broke that trend line down. They're holding it. This is this accumulation range between 457, 458 today by the sellers in the Qs.
Yeah.
So we flex above that 458. That could trigger a squeeze this late in the day. What's going on?
Yeah, man. Hey, listen, the bulls are trying to take control. I love to see it. What's interesting is Russell's index. I keep the Russells, the RUI up, just to take a look at small caps. Small caps making a little move here over the last 2 hours too. You don't usually see.
Go to the moon, small caps. Go to the moon. When they're good, everything is good.
Well, that's why I look at them. They're a precessor. When they start to take off, you know what's following.
Yes, sir.
So that's why I keep it up there as one of the ones I look at a lot. VIX actually
I'm a big
starting to.
fan of these crypto names, Howard. I don't know how you feel about Bitcoin, but I was watching MSTR early. I thought they're going to be a good rebound play. They've been holding at a critical level, and I've been looking at some of these little crappier names like I don't know if you know who Iron Mountain or I don't know, they're not Iron Mountain, IREN and CLSK Clean Spark.
CleanSpark is a. I'm very familiar with them. What was the other
They're
one?
a great momentum name. I really thought they were having a nice little lift and they were make this run. I was thinking that they could make this run above 10 to 13. And there's this company called IREN, Iris Energy. Keep an eye on them, Howard, because same thing. They're at a nice little pivot level. They're actually in relation to old highs. So this is kind of a institutional demand zone. And when that Bitcoin run happened earlier, look at how big of a valuation. They jumped up 200% from that breakout alone. And they have a history. They have a great history of price performance. You know, I put them kind of in the same category as like Hut, Hive. I know you're familiar with these companies. You know, Clean Spark. I'm not the biggest fan of Riot. I like Mara a little bit more. Just
I definitely know Mara. Mara is definitely the class when it comes to Bitcoin miners.
Yeah, 100%.
Without a doubt. You know, the things you got to keep in mind there is they don't buy any of their own facilities, so it protects them in the bad times. They don't get as much profitability during the good times that the Riot does. Riot's had trouble down in Texas keeping their stuff online at White Horse, so that's a pretty much a little problem there. Can't argue with MSTR, especially if you do think that Bitcoin's going to make its move. You know, my view is that Bitcoin isn't. You know, they hold, more than anybody else. Although, up until we just had about 1.8 billion in outflows last week on the ETFs, BlackRock was up there. They had over 30,000 Bitcoin.
I'm just saying, Michael Saylor went on CNBC yesterday and called for 13 million on Bitcoin.
Oh, did he? Oh, I didn't.
He did. He said it with the straightest face. They were like flabbergasted, and he's like, "No, I really do believe it."
So
he's calling for 13 million. Not now, but that's
right. And it's not now. But what I would point to as some things that reasons why some of these things are also still being pointed to by Kathy Woods and the folks at Van Eck and some of these other Jack Dorseys and things to keep in mind. If I told you 4 years ago that 2 of the 3 presidential candidates would support putting Bitcoin in the reserve currency of the United States, what would you have said to me?
Yeah, like crazy. But
right,
here we
but
are.
Both Trump and Kennedy did. And that's so that's where we're at. The world is a different place. These ETFs, now that BlackRock holds them, now that Larry Fink has his hands in it, now that Jamie Dimon does, now that these other guys, it changes the narrative. So when does it become a basket in everybody's sort of toolbox? Because it's nowhere near there right now. And the bottom line is you see what's happening. We saw all of the institutional selling that happened with the Mt. Gox releases with the U.S. government that sold billions and billions of dollars of Bitcoin recently. And that didn't move the price down because, who's buying it? It's not what it used to be where there was these whales in China that are buying this stuff. Now it's Michael Saylor. It's, Mike Novogratz. It's Larry Fink. It's, Mark Cuban. It's these guys that are buying that. So you're seeing it. You're seeing the whales are continuing to buy right now. And, that's what I always warned you about when I was at Prosper, right? I'd say, hey, buddy, we're seeing capitulation at the short-term holder. We're seeing capitulation by the little minnows. But what I'm noticing, and we're noticing it right now, is that where the whales are picking up more and more Bitcoin. It's usually a predecessor. It's usually 8 to 10 months after the halving when we see the big jump. That was in April, so it's not going to come till November, December, where that supply shrinkage is going to start to lead to price. And like you said, that's when I would be looking for Clean Spark and Hut and all those guys to hit their next jump up, because you'll start to hear the talk about profitability for them, and that will become a big talking point in the next 3 months, because as the price moves up, their profitability goes up tremendously very quickly.
And it's funny you mentioned the presidential candidates. After Trump made that appearance at the biggest Bitcoin conference, Kamala's campaign came out and said that she's going to be meeting with a lot of the industry leaders and working on some sort of
Yes.
deal.
So I'm a little bit involved at ABCA with that in DC. So yeah, what she's doing is if you don't know, a lot of her money comes from Silicon Valley. She was a California senator, you know what I mean? AG there, close. That's where her power base is. So who are those? Those are the Peter Thiels of the world, the Fred Thiels of the world, people we just talked about, Mara, PayPal. You know, those are the companies that they were running. So some of those progressive folks in Silicon Valley do have her ear, and are some of her bigger donors, and are doing that. Her PACs are all accepting crypto. So her campaign, I don't think, has yet turned the spigot on, but the others have. We've also seen how it's affected different races. Right where I am right here in Ohio, we're going to kick Sherrod Brown out to bring in Bernie Moreno, because Sherrod Brown's a joke running the banking committee, the Senate Finance and Banking Committee, when the guy is as anti-tech as he is. So hopefully my vote will help get him out of office here.
I vote for.
But yeah, crypto has definitely put their money behind their mouth, so to speak, when it comes to the candidates, and they're responding. We're seeing you're going to see some movement in regulations and in clarity around stable coins by the end of the year. You really are, and you're going to see some things that are going to be pro Bitcoin and pro blockchain technology. I won't say pro crypto, because there is definitely still some components of that world that need to get cleaned up and straightened out. Charlie, thank you so much for spending this time with us today. I really appreciate it. Dropping all kinds of knowledge here. We will be back every Tuesday to talk about stuff. I've got the legend himself, Charlie Moon from Prosper Trading Academy. Charlie, you good to take us out. What's the final words for the day?
Man, I want to say fade this rally, to be honest with you, but we'll have to wait and see. Everything is kind of hinging on the report tomorrow. Don't forget CPI before the open. Yeah. It's going to be really important. I don't know if it's going to be the same needle mover as the jobs report has been, but all of these reports are going to matter. They're the last reports that the Fed is going to analyze before they make their policy decision. So tomorrow, if we've seen the swings like we have the last 2 days, it could just amplify. Just be ready tomorrow. We'll see which way it goes.
Sounds good. I'm sure I'll be checking in with you in the morning, Charlie. Thanks a lot. See you again next week. Thank you, everybody.
Take care, brother.